in Shanksville and at the Pentagon, but those who went to war for our country. In Afghanistan, 2,461 American service members were lost, and thousands of contractors, and of course tens of thousands of civilians over those years, that continuum of loss. And I also I have a friend. Her name is Heather Penny. She was a fighter pilot on September 11th, 2001, a 26-year-old fighter pilot who was sent up. They didn't have weapons on the jets. She was ready to ram her jet and sacrifice her life to stop a commercial airliner at that point, if one more had headed towards Washington. And she had some thoughts today, which I find uplifting. She said that day revealed to us the true greatness and character of the American spirit. Ordinary, everyday Americans were true heroes in the face of unspeakable horror. Yet today we live in an America bombarded by angry partisan rhetoric. We are a nation divided. How can any hero come from that? But she said the legacy of 9/11 should not be trauma, fear, and hate. We witnessed better than that in the heroes of that day. Let us live into their legacy, their spirit. Beautifully said, Heather Penny. You're here. Beautifully said indeed.
And Heather's words be heard by everybody watching, Martha. Our thanks to you. And, you know, Martha talks about the long war and the loss of life. And, of course, we honor all of those young men and women who defended their country in the wake of 9/11, inspired by the darkness of that day. And it's interesting to watch President Biden now paying his respects in Shanksville, President Bush earlier, at sort of both ends of the war in Afghanistan. There'll be plenty of time to debate the politics of that war, how it started, how it ended. But the fact that they both are paying tribute today in that same place should be a reminder to this country that the message of unity should be the most important message of all today. And I want to bring in Terry Moran. He was covering President Bush at the time. Secret Service sent him out of the White House. And Terry, we also know that Ann Compton was on board Air Force One. We know the president was up in the air for many hours. He wanted to get back to Washington. They said, you know, this isn't a good idea. Andy Card famously tells that story. And ultimately, though, he did come back to Washington, and it was the day that not only changed the nation, but the course of his presidency.
No question about it, David. He came into the office of the presidency, without a great agenda before him, without a great deal of experience, certainly in world affairs, and in those moments, his presidency changed, his life changed. The world came down on him. He was a different president for the rest of his 2 terms, for better or worse, and that will be debated. But I was struck by what he said at Shanksville. He said that in the days after 9/11, that he saw us rally to one another, is the way he put it. That in that spirit of 9/11, and it's true, we did. Young people enlisted in the armed services, older Americans, they volunteered in their communities, people gave blood, they wore flag pins. Even something as small and intimate as exchanging reassuring, encouraging glances on the subway or the grocery store, dropping off the kids at school, we did come together. That's all gone now, and it is called sometimes by people on all sides of the political spectrum a myth, a lie, that the notion that we ever shared the common life that President Bush was talking about is somehow a lie. Very cynical age we live in right now, that America itself is some kind of lie. But as a wise historian once said, America isn't a lie, it is a disappointment. And it can only be a disappointment because it is also a hope, a land of hope. And I think in times of crisis, that hope of what America can be, what we can be together, is actually our greatest strength. And perhaps recalling 9/11 and the days after, as President Bush did, as we all are doing, perhaps that can remind us of that strength, that abiding strength, our hope.
Well, let's hope that's true, Terry. I think you and I have said this all along this morning, Robin, that we hope the feeling of this day, the heaviness of this day, and the inspiration, the resilience of these families is something that continues well beyond this day.
I was going to say that we had that conversation, and we were looking at each other, in each other's eyes, and almost pleading and hoping that could this be the moment? Could this be a game changer in some ways? And just helping people to understand, as we've heard from former President Bush and also from Vice President Kamala Harris, the two to speak today, that on different ends as they are, that there is common ground. And so that is the hope.
because I remember after 9/11 and you'd walk by somebody in the street in New York and you'd actually make eye contact. And then slowly, it went back to being how it once was. So it's just hope. You know, it's not anything that can be fleeting. It can be real, and it's something that to believe in and to help one another understand.
It is. It's simple acts, and that was what she said. Look up, make eye contact with people, ask them how they're doing, and then listen to their answer. And as they play taps down at ground zero, Byron gets, I know that you feel strongly about that too. Just listen to people and let them know that you do really care.
David, absolutely. I was thinking, Robin and Robert and I have talked in the past. We both grew up in church. And so for me, this day has felt like a church revival. In the beginning, it's sad, people cry, but by the end of it, your spirits are lifted. 20 years ago, in this very spot, horror fell from the sky. But today's powerful service reminds me of the scripture's take on the sky. Psalm 121 says, I will lift up my eyes upon the hills, which cometh my help. 20 years ago, on this day, in these days, the mortar of misery bonded our nation. I think we can hope 20 years later that the mortar of memories can bridge the divide in our nation. And David, finally, if I may, this is the jacket I wore on September 11th. It was blue back then, covered in dust. I put it in the closet. I didn't want to revisit it, didn't want to see it. For some reason, a couple of years ago, I took it out, I looked at it, thought about the day, I cried. I took it to the cleaners, and I dyed it black for some reason. And it reminds me that, the fiber of a fine tailored suit is nice.